Okay, so now if we just kind of look back over this, when I talked about those 20 comments, you can see that I just sort of like made connections and tried to, you know, decide what my thoughts were as I kind of went through. And there's no way that there's not 20 comments here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Look, I got 20 and I'm not even halfway through. So you can definitely do 20 comments. I know that number sounds like a lot, but it's definitely completely doable. Okay. So now that we've kind of gone through this poem and we see that the speaker is a woman in the Holocaust who's experienced during this really like terrible and traumatic moment during the Holocaust, before the camps, in terms of the Holocaust sort of being her experiences in the camps. Then what you're going to do is you're going to go up to this like kind of corner piece and we're going to do some annotations. And you're going to grab 4 colors, any 4 colors you want, but you're going to stick to those 4 colors for the whole packet. So make sure that they're colors that you like. And you're going to take your first color and we're going to kind of just color in that first box so we know what we're looking for. And we're looking at language observation. So like what kind of things can I talk about in terms of diction and tone? Remember that diction is just word choice. So patterns that you see in terms of words, right? So we're just kind of making observations. So I would go through and just kind of look at sort of like what observations do I have. If I go back to the title, Shooting Stars, now I can kind of again talk about sort of that pattern of violence. And if I wanted to, I could sort of go through and look at that. So like they break our fingers, again, violence. Gaze of men with guns is violence. The stars on our brows could again be those like the targets, so that could be violence. You waited for the bullet and fell, that could be violence. The loosened his belt is a suggestion of a threat, so that could be violence. A ragged gape of fear, because a gape is like a gap, sort of like an open space. So this idea of like being so emotional, being so afraid. Appalling days kind of goes with that for me, so I would mark that. Acts of torture, gap of corpses, that kind of actually mimics that gape of fear. They shot her in the eye, that's violence. Preparing to die is violence. Graves is violence. The click, a trick. That's kind of interesting. Suffering, moans of the people dying. And then the spades shovel soil. So we've got like a real pattern here of violence. I'm just going to make a little comment up in my box about violence. I would also probably talk about the names of over here of Rebecca, Rachel, Ruth, Aaron, Emmanuel, David. Those are kind of Jewish names. I would also probably talk about the remember piece, because after the Holocaust, this was sort of the call to action, that like we should remember the horrors of the Holocaust and so we don't repeat them. This kind of like rhetorical question, and then this kind of like sister again is speaking to the kind of connection. So I would sort of just sort of reference some of those pieces. So up here, I'm gonna kind of call it like the descriptive piece, and I'm gonna talk about it in terms of conversation. And then I'm gonna grab a second color and I'm going to color in the next box. And now we're just looking for structural observations. So like what kind of things do you notice about the structure of the poem? So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stanzas. So we're gonna go 6 stanzas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we got 4 lines in each stanza. When you have these tabs, that typically just indicates that that piece would go with this line, so you don't necessarily have to count that as something separate. in terms of the stanza structure, I would kind of separate as when you're doing kind of like annotations, because it's on its own, if you were going to write this in an essay, but either way is fine. So 4 lines, 5 lines, kind of however you wanted to mark that. We don't really have a rhyme scheme, so I'm just going to mark no rhyme. Okay, and that went really quick. So our next color for me is going to be orange. And now we're looking at textual features. Textual features are things like symbolism, imagery, irony, allusion, anaphora, alliteration, all those kinds of like devices and things that the author is using. So I definitely want to talk about kind of alliteration, and I want to talk about consonants, because we have the trick and click. We also have the Rebecca, Rachel, Ruth up at the top. We have gaze and guns. We have there was another one too, wasn't there? Down here, that really interesting line here with all the S's: sleep, spades, shovels, spills, soil, Sarah, hazard. So like all those kind of S sounds. So I would definitely mark that. I would also talk about imagery, because we have a lot of like really intense imagery here. And I'm just going to circle this comment that I made, negative imagery. I would also probably put imagery here, because that's like a really dark image. And again, imagery down here, right? And so we got some really like intense and dark imagery. I would probably talk about illusions, because again, I would, this reference to kind of Jewish culture, I would talk about the remember as an illusion, the history lesson as an illusion. I also think you could talk about anaphora. Oh, just really quickly going back to this idea of illusion, by the way, the shooting stars, then I realize now we're talking about stars as sort of like a metaphor for the Jewish people. And so the title actually becomes so dark. Shooting stars speaks to the violence of this experience rather than something that is lucky. So I was definitely wrong about the title. And then my last color is just point of view. So you can look at it literally, which is like first person, second person, third person. And we have I. And we know that like she's talking to someone else. You would not look at me. Once I was alive. And so this is a woman, and she's Jewish. This is all kind of going into the perspective piece. And she is sort of in this kind of attack against Jewish people during the Holocaust. And we can actually go down here too, and further evidence of the kind of gender piece is the sister if sees part us. So this idea of them being linked by gender and humanity rather than literally by being sisters. So that's kind of what you're looking at, okay?